The night was silent, but the great hall was alive with light. Tall crystal pillars glowed in shades of blue and silver, casting long beams across the gathering. The air was thick with tension, as if every breath carried the weight of destiny. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on the center stage, where the sacred ritual of bonding was about to begin. She stood there, her hands trembling, her heart beating so loud that she thought the whole hall could hear it. The alien girl had dreamed of this day since childhood. The ceremony of bonds was not just tradition, it was life itself for her people. To bond was to find one's true mate, a partner chosen not by chance, but by fate itself. A glowing mark would appear, revealing the one destined for her soul. She looked around nervously, catching the proud gazes of families, the hopeful smiles of young maidens, and the stern faces of the elders. The hall was filled with whispers, but all fell quiet when the drums began. A deep sound shook the floor, slow and heavy. Each beat carried the promise of truth. The elders walked forward, robed in white and gold. They formed a circle around the chosen youth, raising their staffs high. Sparks of energy danced in the air. The girl stepped forward when her name was called. Her knees weak but her spirit strong. She was ready, or so she thought. Her people expected her bond to be strong. She came from a respected line. Her father had bonded with honor, her mother with grace. It was assumed her fate would lead her to a noble warrior, someone worthy of her family name. She told herself the same, whispering silently. It will be someone like us, it must be. The moment arrived. She closed her eyes as the chant began. The elders' voices rose, filling the hall like a storm. The air shimmered, a golden circle forming beneath her feet. She felt her chest burn, not with pain but with something deeper. The mark was awakening. Gasps echoed around her as the light from her chest shot upward, brighter than any other seen that night. The crowd leaned forward, eyes wide with awe. The girl opened her eyes slowly, breath trembling. The glowing line stretched across the hall, moving past the waiting youths of her own people, past the noble warriors who expected her. Her heart dropped. The bond line moved further still, all the way to the edge of the gathering where an outsider stood, a human. The hall froze in silence. No one spoke, no one moved. The bond mark glowed fiercely, pointing to him as if the universe itself had made the choice. The girl's legs gave out. She fell to her knees in shock. Her voice failed her, but her lips whispered, "No, it cannot be." The human looked just as surprised. He had not come to be part of the ceremony. He was only a guest, invited out of courtesy. His clothes were plain compared to the robes of the others, his stance awkward under the piercing eyes of hundreds. But the bond mark burned between them, undeniable. The crowd erupted. Whispers turned to shouts. Some called it blasphemy. Others shouted for the elders to end this mistake. Mothers pulled their children close, as if even standing near a human was a curse. The elders themselves were silent, their faces unreadable. They had seen many ceremonies, many strange destinies, but this was unheard of. The girl pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the heat of the mark. Her body refused to deny it. Her soul trembled. She wanted to scream, to run, to vanish from sight. How could fate betray her like this? Her people had always spoken of humans as weak, clumsy, and lesser. How could her destiny be tied to him? Her eyes filled with tears. She remembered the stories. The bond mark never lied. The human took a step forward, hesitant. His eyes met hers. Not with arrogance, not with anger, but with something else, something steady. As if he too did not understand, but he would not turn away. The elders raised their staffs to silence the chaos. The chief elder's voice boomed. The bond has spoken. His words were heavy, final, yet the hall shook with protest. The girl's heart raced. She felt the bond pulling at her soul, demanding her to look at him, to accept what had been written. But her mind fought against it. She was kneeling, broken between shame and disbelief, and the human. He simply stood silent, his hand clenched at his side, as if ready to bear whatever storm would come. The ceremony of bonds had revealed the unthinkable. The bond mark pointed to a human, and nothing would ever be the same again. The hall was no longer silent. The moment the bond pointed to the human, chaos broke loose. Voices rose like a storm, whispers turning into angry shouts. Some cried out that the ceremony had been corrupted. Others demanded the mark be cleansed. A few stared at the human with open hatred, calling him an intruder. The girl was still on her knees, her heart racing. Her people had always taught her that the bond was sacred, unbreakable. Now she was caught between that teaching and the shame boiling around her. Her hands shook, pressing against the glowing mark on her chest. She wanted it to fade, to vanish, but it only burned brighter. The elders raised their staffs to calm the crowd. Their voices echoed, "The bond has spoken, and the bond never lies," but instead of calming the people, those words only made the whispers sharper. A noble warrior stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. He had hoped to be her match, but the mark had passed him by. He shouted, "This is wrong, she belongs to our kind." "Not to an outsider." Gasps filled the hall. Some nodded in agreement. Others demanded the human be removed. The human himself stood quietly, his jaw tight. He had not asked for this. He had not even believed such bonds existed until now. But every eye was on him, blaming him for something beyond his control. The girl forced herself to rise, her knees still weak. She looked at the human with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Why him? Of all beings, why would fate tie her soul to his? Her lips trembled. It cannot be true. "It cannot!" The chief elder spoke again, his voice steady but grave. "Fate does not bend to our wishes, the bond has chosen, and we must see where it leads." But the other elders exchanged uneasy glances. They had never seen a bond cross the lines of species, never seen the mark choose one not of their people. Families pulled their children back, mothers covering their eyes, as if the sight of the human's glow was poison. The warriors muttered among themselves. Some wanted him thrown out. Some wanted him punished for daring to stand there. The human took a slow breath. His hand rested at his side. His posture straight though his heart pounded. He could feel their hatred, their scorn. He had been called many things before, outsider, weakling, lesser, but never a curse. And yet, as their eyes burned into him, that was exactly what he felt. Still, when his gaze met hers, he did not look away. His voice was low but steady. "I did not choose this, but I will not turn my back on it either." His words silenced the room for a moment. The courage in his tone carried more weight than anyone expected. The girl's breath caught. She wanted to deny him, to shout that she would never accept such a fate. Yet deep inside, the bond pulled at her. Whispering that his words were true, her chest ached, not from shame, but from the strange connection tying her to him. The noble warrior sneered, stepping closer, his hand on the blade at his side. "You speak as though you are one of us. Human, but you are not, you are nothing, and you do not deserve her." The human did not move. His eyes narrowed, his voice sharp but calm. "I don't care about what I deserve, I care about what is right." The crowd erupted again. Some laughed bitterly, some shouted for blood. The girl's vision blurred with tears. She felt as if she were trapped in a nightmare, torn between the voice of her people and the call of her bond. The chief elder raised his staff once more. His voice thundered through the hall. "Enough! The bond must be tested. Only through trials shall its truth be known." The hall went silent. Every face turned toward the girl and the human. The words of the elder carried finality. Their future would not be decided by protest or fear, but by proof. The girl's body shook. She wanted to refuse, to walk away. But when she looked at the human, standing firm despite the hatred pressing against him, something within her wavered. She could not deny the light that still burned between them. She whispered softly, her voice trembling, "Why do you stand here when they all want you gone?" His eyes softened, just for her. "Because fate pointed me to you, and I will not run from it." Her chest tightened. She wanted to scream at him, to push him away, but instead, tears slipped down her cheeks. She turned her face from the crowd, her voice breaking. "Then we walk this path together. Even if it destroys us both." The hall buzzed with disbelief. The elders exchanged grave looks. The crowd murmured in shock. The forbidden match had not been broken. Instead, it had been accepted, even if only in the first fragile step. And so it was decided the trials would begin. The alien girl and the human would face them side by side. Their bond would either shatter under the weight of doubt, or shine so bright that even the fiercest hatred could not dim it. But as the human and the girl stood together, their bond glowing faintly between them, everyone in the hall knew one truth. Whatever the outcome, nothing would ever be the same again. The night after the ceremony, the human sat alone at the edge of the alien city. The stars above were cold and endless. He felt the weight of hundreds of angry eyes still burning into his back. The bond mark on his chest glowed faintly, stubbornly alive no matter how much he wished for silence. He had not asked for this, he had come as a guest, nothing more. He had never believed in destiny, and yet destiny had dragged him into the center of a storm. The girl's face haunted his thoughts, the way she had fallen to her knees, the tears in her eyes, the fear in her voice. He had seen disgust and confusion in her, but beneath it all he had felt her pain. The city was not kind to him that night. The whispers followed him through the streets. Children pointed, mothers pulled them away. Warriors spat at the ground when he passed. He was an outsider, a mistake, a curse. Yet the mark on his chest did not care for their hatred. It burned with the truth of the bond. The elders summoned him the next morning. Their chamber was dark, the air heavy with incense. They looked at him with unreadable eyes. The chief elder spoke slowly. "You may leave now, human. You owe us nothing. Walk away before this bond destroys you." The human lifted his head. His voice was steady, though his heart pounded. "If I leave, what happens to her?" The elders exchanged glances. One answered coldly, "She will suffer, but it will fade. Perhaps another path will open for her. Perhaps not." The human clenched his fists. He thought of her standing alone against her people, shamed by something she did not choose. His jaw tightened. "No," he said firmly. "I will not abandon her." The chamber fell silent. The elders studied him carefully. Some shook their heads, one even laughed bitterly. "You do not understand, human. Our people will never accept this." "You will be hated," hunted, cast out. He did not flinch. His voice cut through the smoke. "I have been hated before, I have been cast out before. But I will not run this time, not when fate itself tied me to her." The words shocked even himself. He had always lived quietly, avoiding conflict, yet here he was, standing against a council of alien elders, refusing to let go of someone he barely knew. But it felt right. More right than anything he had done in his life. The girl was brought before the elders soon after. Her steps were slow, her eyes red from sleepless tears. She avoided his gaze, afraid of what she might see in his face. The chief elder looked between them. "The human has chosen to stay. Will you also accept this path, child?" Her lips trembled. She felt the pull of the bond even now, but her heart was torn. Her people's voices echoed in her head, calling her cursed, calling her ruined. She wanted to scream no, to free herself from the shame. Yet when she looked up, she saw the human standing there. Not afraid, not ashamed. His eyes were steady, waiting, offering her the choice. For a long moment, she could not speak. Her chest rose and fell quickly. The silence was painful. Then softly she whispered, "I do not know if I can accept him. I do not know if I can accept myself." The human's voice broke through. Gentle but strong. "You don't have to decide now. But know this, I will not leave you. Not while this bond is alive. Not while you stand alone." Her eyes widened. Tears burned again. She had expected him to deny her, to walk away to save himself. Yet he spoke as if her pain was his burden, as if her shame was his fight. Something inside her cracked. Something fragile but real. The elders frowned, but the chief elder nodded slowly. "Then the trials will continue. The bond must be proven. Or it will break." The girl turned away, her hands clutching her robe. Her thoughts swirled with fear, confusion, and a strange, dangerous hope. She hated herself for it. But deep inside, she felt less alone. Later, when they were left together in the quiet of the courtyard, she finally spoke to him, her voice low. "Why do you fight for me? You do not even know me." He looked at her, his expression calm. "Because I know what it is like to be unwanted. I will not let fate tie you to me and then let you suffer alone." Her breath caught. She stared at him, searching for lies. But there were none. His words were simple, honest. And though fear still gripped her heart, the bond between them pulsed gently, as if agreeing with him for the first time. She did not feel cursed for the first time. She wondered if fate had chosen not a mistake, but something neither of them yet understood. And in that moment, under the faint glow of the bond, the girl realized something terrifying. She did not hate him anymore. The trials began at dawn. The sun rose red across the horizon, painting the sky in fire. The girl stood at the edge of the sacred grounds, her hands trembling as she held her staff beside her. The human adjusted the leather straps on his arms. His face was steady, though his heart beat fast. The elders had spoken the night before. If the bond was real, they would survive together. If it was false, the bond would break in death or defeat. There would be no mercy. The girl had grown up fearing these trials. They were designed to test courage, strength, and the spirit of unity. No pair had ever faced them with such doubt. The first trial was the pit of beasts. A massive gate opened with a grinding roar, and the sound of claws scraping stone echoed into the air. The girl's breath caught from the shadows. Monstrous creatures crawled out, their eyes glowing red, teeth like knives. The crowd watching from the walls gasped. Her knees almost gave way. She had trained to fight, but never against creatures like these. She gripped her staff tightly, whispering, "We will die here." The human glanced at her, his voice calm.
"Not if we stand together," the beasts charged, snarling. The girl swung her staff.
Striking one across the jaw, the human grabbed another, slamming it into the ground with raw strength. They moved clumsily at first, uncoordinated. She fought as she had been trained, sharp, quick, precise, while he fought with instinct. Brute force, yet as the minutes dragged on, something began to shift when a beast lunged at her blind side. The human shoved her out of the way. Taking the blow himself, his arm bled, but he didn't stop. When another leapt at him from behind, she spun her staff and struck it down. Their movements began to flow together. Not perfect, but enough. Finally, the last beast fell with a thud. The arena floor was stained with dust and blood. The crowd above murmured, shocked that they had survived. The girl stood panting, her eyes wide. The bond mark on her chest glowed faintly, as if approving their unity. The second trial came at night, the trial of storms. They were sent into the wilderness where lightning split the sky and rain poured in sheets. The path was treacherous, cliffs rising on either side. The girl slipped on the wet stone, but the human caught her hand. Holding her steady, she looked at him. Rain dripping down his face, he did not speak. Only pulled her forward, his grip strong. She had always thought of humans as fragile. Weak, yet here he was, carrying her weight when she faltered, shielding her from the wind with his own body. At one point, the storm grew so fierce they could barely see. She cried out in fear, her voice lost in the thunder, but he leaned close, shouting, "Keep moving. I will not let go." His voice anchored her, stronger than the storm. By dawn, they stumbled out of the wilderness, soaked and bruised, but alive. The elders who waited at the gates could not hide their surprise. The girl fell to her knees, exhausted, but this time she did not feel shame. She felt something new, trust. The final trial awaited them, the trial of fire. They were led into a cavern lit by rivers of molten lava. The heat was suffocating. The path across was narrow, sharp stones jutting out above the glowing flames. One misstep meant death. The girl hesitated, sweat dripping down her skin. Her legs shook. "I cannot do this," she whispered. The human stepped beside her, his hand brushing hers. "You can," he said. "And if you fall, I will catch you, step by step." They crossed the deadly path. The ground shook beneath them. A stone broke loose. She slipped, her scream echoing in the cavern. But before the fire could take her, his arm wrapped around her waist. Pulling her back, his body shook with the strain. His face pale from the heat, but he did not let go. She clung to him, her heart pounding. For the first time, she saw him not as a stranger, not as a mistake, but as someone who would give everything for her. At last they reached the other side, their clothes scorched, their bodies trembling but alive. The bond mark blazed across both their chests, shining brighter than ever before. The cavern walls reflected its light, undeniable. The elders who had followed stood in silence. The crowd beyond the cavern waited in awe. None could deny what they had seen. Together against every danger, the human and the girl had survived. The girl turned to him, her breath still shaking, her eyes searched his, and for a moment she forgot the world. The crowd, even the elders, all she saw was him, the man fate had tied her to. The man who had saved her again and again. She whispered softly, almost to herself. Maybe this bond is not a curse after all. The human did not answer with words. He simply held her gaze, steady, unshaken, and in the silence between them, she felt something far more powerful than fear. Not destiny, not tradition, but choice. The trials were over. The bond had not broken. Instead, it glowed stronger, like fire refusing to die. The human and the alien girl were given a night of rest before the final judgment. They were taken to a quiet shelter at the edge of the city, away from the shouting crowd and the eyes of the elders. Inside the small chamber, the fire crackled gently. The girl sat near it, her hands resting on her knees. Her eyes stared at the flames, but her thoughts were tangled. She still felt the heat of his arm pulling her from the fire, the sound of his voice against the storm, the way he stood between her and the beasts. Every image replayed again and again. The human sat across from her, cleaning the wounds on his arm with rough cloth. His face was calm, though his body ached. He did not complain, did not curse. He simply worked in silence. As if pain was nothing to him, she watched him secretly, her chest tightening with emotions she did not want to name. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. "You could have left me many times. You could have let the beast tear me apart. You could have let me fall into the fire, why didn't you?" He lifted his eyes slowly, meeting hers across the flickering flames. His voice was steady. "Because the bond tied me to you, and because I chose it too." Her lips parted in shock. She whispered, "You chose it?" He nodded. "Fate may have written the bond, but I decided to stand in it. No one forced me to fight for you. I did it because I wanted to." Her heart pounded. She had grown up believing bonds were duty, something heavy and sacred, never choice. And yet here was this human, saying it was both fate and freedom. That thought frightened her. But it also warmed her in ways she had never known. She turned her eyes away, her cheeks burning. "I am not worth such loyalty," she whispered. His voice cut through the silence, gentle but strong. "You are worth more than you know." Her throat tightened. Tears pricked her eyes. For so long she had felt like a disappointment, trapped in the weight of her people's judgment. But his words struck deep, as if he saw something inside her that no one else ever had. The firelight danced across his face. Casting shadows, she studied him carefully. The sharpness of his jaw, the steady calm in his eyes, the quiet strength in the way he carried himself. He was different from her people, rougher, less graceful. But there was a strength in him that no training could create. A strength born from will. As the night deepened, the bond mark glowed faintly between them. She could feel its pull, stronger now. Not just a thread of destiny, but a thread of something more. She pressed her hand to her chest, whispering, "Why does it feel different now?" He looked at her gently, his voice low. "Because trust changes everything." Her breath caught. She realized he was right. In the trial, she had stopped seeing him as a curse. She had laughed once when he slipped in the mud, had leaned on him when her legs failed, had shared food with him in the storm. Somewhere between survival and struggle, her fear had become trust. The silence stretched, heavy and warm. She shifted closer to the fire. Closer to him, her heart pounded. She asked softly, "If the elders let me walk away tomorrow, would you still stay?" He nodded without hesitation. "I would stay even if you left, because my choice is mine." Her tears spilled. She covered her mouth with her hand, trembling. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever made her feel free in the middle of chains. Without thinking, she reached out. Her fingers brushed his wounded arm. He flinched slightly but did not pull away. She whispered, "Does it hurt?" He smiled faintly, not as much as it should. Her lips curved in the smallest smile. It surprised her, after so much fear, to feel warmth in her chest. For a moment, the shame of the crowd, the anger of the warriors, the judgment of the elders, all of it faded. There was only him, the human who refused to abandon her. The bond glowed brighter, wrapping them in soft light. She could feel it in her chest, in her pulse. It was no longer just a mark of destiny. It was alive, beating with her heart, answering his. She whispered almost too softly to hear. Maybe fate did not make a mistake. He leaned closer, his eyes never leaving hers. His voice was low, steady. Or maybe fate gave us a chance, and it's up to us to make it real. Her breath trembled. She had never believed humans could speak with such weight. But his words lit something inside her, a flame she could not ignore. That night, as the fire burned low, the alien girl realized her heart was no longer fighting against the bond. It was awakening to it, to him, and though fear still lingered, it was joined by something stronger, something terrifying and beautiful hope. The morning came heavy with silence. The air in the city felt different, as if everyone was holding their breath. The girl and the human were summoned to the grand hall once more, where the elders and the people waited. The final judgment would be given. The girl's steps were slow, her heart pounding. She wore a simple robe, her hair tied back. Her bond mark glowed faintly on her chest. The human walked beside her, quiet but steady, his face calm, his eyes sharp. He looked like a man ready to face anything, even the hatred of an entire people. The hall was full, more crowded than during the first ceremony. Families, warriors, elders, even children had come. Some leaned forward with curiosity. Others glared with disgust. All of them wanted to see what fate would declare. The chief elder rose, his staff glowing with light. His voice echoed through the chamber. The trials have been completed. The bond has not broken. The girl and the human have endured together. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some shouted, "It means nothing. The bond is still false, a curse." Others whispered in fear. The bond glowing across two different beings was something their people had never seen. The girl trembled. She wanted to hide, to disappear. Yet when she looked at the human standing firm, she felt a strength rise in her chest. The bond pulsed warmly, reminding her of the nights by the fire, of his words, of his choice. The chief elder turned his gaze upon her. "Child, you must speak. The bond ties you to him, but you have a choice. Will you claim him as your fate or reject him?" The hall grew quiet, every eye fixed on her. Her knees threatened to give way, her voice stuck in her throat. She remembered the laughter of the warriors, the shame in her mother's eyes, the whispers of the crowd. "She is cursed. She is ruined." But then she remembered his hand pulling her from the fire, his voice in the storm, his words by the hearth. "Because I chose it too." Her heart raced. She looked at him. He did not speak, did not beg. He simply waited, his eyes calm, as if the choice was truly hers. Tears burned her eyes, her lips trembled. She whispered, "I..." The word broke. She closed her eyes, the bond glowing brighter. She could feel it beating in her chest, demanding truth. "I do not reject him," she said, louder this time. "I will not call fate a mistake." The hall erupted in shouts, some in outrage, some in disbelief. The chief elder raised his staff, silencing them. "Then speak clearly, child. Do you accept him?" Her body shook. She dropped to her knees, not in shame this time, but in strength. Her voice carried through the hall. "Yes, I accept him, not because of fate, but because he stood by me. He is mine, and I am his." The bond mark burst into light, brighter than ever before. The glow spread from her chest to his, linking them together with a thread of fire that no one could deny. The crowd gasped, some shielding their eyes. The light was proof, undeniable and final. The human stepped forward then. He knelt beside her, his hand over his heart, his voice steady. "I do not claim her because destiny told me to. I claim her because she is worth every choice I have made. And if the whole world rejects me, I will still not walk away." The silence that followed was heavy. The elders themselves looked shaken. They had expected fear, denial, perhaps even death. But what stood before them was stronger than anything they could have imagined. A noble warrior broke the silence, shouting, "This cannot be. It defies nature. It defies law." He drew his blade, fury in his eyes. But before he could strike, the bond flared again, throwing him back with a burst of light. The crowd cried out, some in terror, others in awe. The bond itself was defending them, proving it was real. The elders looked at each other, their voices low. The chief elder finally spoke. "The bond has chosen, and no hand may break it. Not even ours." The girl's tears fell freely. She turned to the human, her voice trembling. "They may never accept us, but I will not let them take this from me." He reached out, his hand brushing hers. Then we faced them together. The bond glowed, soft and steady now, not just a mark but a promise. Around them the hall buzzed with disbelief, but none could deny what they had seen. The final judgment was clear. The bond was true. And though the path ahead would be full of battles, hatred, and trials greater than fire, the girl and the human stood side by side, unbroken. For the first time since the ceremony began, she felt no shame, no fear, only strength. Only choice, the elders declared. "So it is written, so it shall remain." And the people, though divided, bowed their heads before the light of the bond that would not break. The hall had fallen into silence after the judgment. But silence did not mean peace. Outside, whispers spread across the city. Some called it a miracle, others called it blasphemy. Families argued in their homes. Warriors sharpened their blades with anger, and yet the mark still burned between the girl and the human, glowing with a truth no voice could erase. That night, the girl sat alone beneath the starlit sky, her knees pressed to the grass, her eyes fixed on the glowing bond mark on her chest. It pulsed softly like the beating of a second heart. She remembered falling to her knees in shame during the first ceremony. Now she was kneeling again, but her tears were different. They were not of fear, but of something deeper. The human approached quietly. His steps were steady, his presence calm. He sat beside her without a word, letting the night speak first. The air smelled of blossoms. The wind carried the hum of distant drums from the city. For a long moment they did not speak. Finally, she whispered, "They will never see us as one of them. Even after the trials, even after the light, They will not accept it. He turned his head slightly, his eyes steady on her. Then we do not live for them. We live for us. Her breath trembled. She wanted to believe those words, but doubt still clung to her heart. What if fate is only cruel? What if this bond destroys you? Destroys me. He leaned closer, his voice firm but gentle. Fate gave us the bond, but love is a choice. And I have already chosen. Her eyes widened. Her chest ached at his words. She had always thought of bonds as chains, unbreakable and heavy. Yet he spoke of them as something alive, something chosen. His voice carried no fear, no shame, only truth. Tears filled her eyes. She pressed her hand to his, their bond mark glowing brighter where their skin touched. She whispered, "Then let me choose too." Her voice grew stronger, breaking through the doubt. "I choose you not because fate tells me, not because I am afraid to stand alone, but because when I look at you, I feel alive." The human's breath caught, his eyes softened. And for the first time since the ceremony began, he smiled, a true unguarded smile. The bond flared in response. The light wrapping around them like fire turned gentle. The elders watched from the shadows, silent witnesses to this moment. They could not deny the power of what they saw. The bond was no longer just fate's mark. It was a vow, freely spoken, freely chosen. The girl leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. For so long she had fought the bond, fought him, fought herself. Now, she allowed her heart to breathe. Her voice was soft but sure. "From the moment I fell to my knees, I thought my life was over, but now I see. It was only beginning." The human's arm wrapped around her shoulders, steady and strong. "Then we begin together," he said. The bond shone brighter, casting their figures in a halo of light beneath the stars. The glow spread into the night, reaching the eyes of those still awake in the city. Some gasped in awe, some turned away in anger, but none could deny it. The choice had been made. The bond was not just fate, it was love. When dawn came, the city stirred with unease. Some demanded the elders break tradition. Others whispered that maybe the world was changing. But the girl no longer cared, the human no longer cared. They stood before the crowd once more, hands joined, marks blazing. The chief elder raised his staff, his voice grave but clear. "The bond is sealed by fate and by choice. Let none speak against it again." There were protests, shouts and cries, but the light of the bond burned too strong. The people bowed their heads, not in acceptance, but in surrender. For the truth was beyond their power to change. The girl turned to the human, her eyes filled with tears. But this time they were tears of joy. Her voice carried through the hall. "I once thought fate cursed me, but it led me to you, and now I will never let go." He squeezed her hand, his voice steady. "And I will never let you stand alone." The crowd watched in silence, unable to tear their eyes from the two figures glowing as one. The elders lowered their staffs, acknowledging what could no longer be denied. For the first time in history, a human and an alien stood bound, not only by destiny but by their own hearts. And as they walked forward together, the hall trembling with the weight of change, one truth echoed louder than all the whispers. Love had triumphed where fear had failed.